Hi folks, this is your MWIS Planning Outlook updated on Tuesday the 16th of May. Starting off by having a look at the general pressure patterns in week-by-week steps as we go forwards. This is the current time then through until next Monday, and where we have the pinker colours on this chart, that's where we have higher than average pressure, and that will keep things relatively quiet through this week ahead for many. We have lower pressure away toward the north, and the jet stream at the moment is passing between Scotland and Iceland, and that will give occasional fronts that will graze across northern Scotland, producing some rain in the northwest at times, but as those fronts run through the zone of higher pressure, they will weaken, so only generally very small amounts of rain, and barely anything really for most of the country. As we go forwards into the final week of May, we still see that zone of low pressure near Iceland, but if anything starting just to pull away a bit further northwards, so that westerly influence likely to ease, but still maybe a few occasional weak fronts trying to get into the far north of Scotland. Fairly high pressure is still nearby, so relatively quiet weather patterns are to be expected. High pressure focused more around Scandinavia at this stage, and also further out over the Atlantic. Lower pressure likely to lie toward the south of Britain, which may just be enough to trigger off one or two showers occasionally across England and Wales. But overall, that week forecast is still a fairly quiet story, and temperatures are still quite close to average. Moving into the start of June, and it's likely that that zone of high pressure around Scandinavia will expand further westwards towards the north of Britain, and that would lead to more of an easterly airflow pattern, particularly across more central and southern regions, but also affecting Scotland as well. It would mean that western Scotland sees the driest, warmest and sunniest conditions in that sort of weather pattern, but much of northern Britain would be expected to be commonly dry. Could be that eastern regions just drag in some low cloud and mist off the North Sea at times. Again, low pressure is kept away toward the south, possibility of maybe a few showers getting into the far south of Britain, but for many this would be a fairly settled spell of weather. A long way off, of course, but the indications going further into early June would just start to weaken that zone of high pressure. It stays toward the north, which would be good news again for dry weather in west and northwest Scotland, but lower pressure to the south is just starting to encroach further northward, so a greater risk of becoming a bit more broken, particularly over England and Wales. That could give showers or even something thundery at times in the mix by that time. Looking at some shorter range details now and thinking about temperatures on the mountains, this is the freezing level chart, this for today Tuesday, and we've been near or even just below freezing point on the higher northern Scottish summits, even as low as around 900 metres for that freezing level in the far north. Now that will tend to lift as we go through into Wednesday, but first thing in the morning the very highest summits near to freezing point and a touch of frost in some of the valleys and the glens just at dawn. By the afternoon that freezing level will be well above the summits, and temperatures on the Munros up to around 5 degrees Celsius or so. That will lift a little bit further as we go into Thursday, so you'll be up to around 6 or 7 degrees at 900 metres by this stage. And as we go through the later part of the week into the weekend, temperatures are well above freezing point on the mountain tops, and values at 900 metres on Saturday may even be close to 10 degrees Celsius, so feeling quite pleasant, especially if out of any wind. Now as we go through into Sunday and Monday, temperatures just coming down a little bit as we change the source of the air slightly around the west-northwest for a time, and it's possible that we could just dip that freezing level back towards around 11 or 1200 metres, perhaps temporarily lower in the far north around Monday. But again, only a temporary drop of freezing level, because I suspect as we go further into next week we will see milder air move back in once again. Looking at the charts then for the days ahead, and we have high pressure on the scene through the middle of this week. We have a front as well which is grazing northwest Scotland as we go through the day on Wednesday, and that bringing some strengthening wind getting towards gale force on northwestern coastal mountains later in the day, 40 or even 50 miles per hour towards Ben Hope for example, and some rain coming in as well. Looking at that on the cloud and the rain sequence, now it's mostly dry in the morning. A few spits and spots of drizzle may just come onto the northwestern coast, but it's through into the middle of the day and the afternoon that rain becomes somewhat steadier across the northwestern highlands. Small amounts inland and eastwards, there may be the odd patch of drizzly rain drift eastwards across northern Scotland through the afternoon, but around Skye and coastal mountains northwards, that rain becoming steadier and heavier as we head towards the back end of the afternoon, and that's setting in then for a good few hours into the evening time. Again, only small amounts once you go further eastwards, so towards the Moray Firth and areas around the Cairngorms, a few spits and spots maybe, just locally persistently damp for a while, but amounts small. But just notice those heavier, brighter colours that are developing in the west later in the day. That's a few hours worth of heavy rain then later on Wednesday. That will tend to break up overnight into Thursday, but will leave a legacy of some patchy drizzle and some low cloud across the hills to start Thursday morning. Some further patchy rain trying to come in from the west during Thursday daytime. That may again just turn fairly persistent around western coastal mountains through the afternoon, and then tending to break up as that front weakens, moving into high pressure. That's how the chart looks on Thursday, with these fairly weak fronts running eastwards, rather cloudy skies for many places, that covering the western hills in Scotland much of the day, and banks of cloud also near to the Irish Sea, covering some higher slopes fairly frequently. But further inland and eastwards across all regions, the cloud base will be higher and it will generally be drier and brighter. Quite breezy across Scotland, especially in the north, lighter winds further south. The far north may stay rather breezy into Friday, but light winds for many places, a little bit gusty occasionally around the Irish Sea. The remnants of a previous front could just give some showers across central England, possibly the Peak District for a time, but many places looking dry and bright, with more in the way of sunshine, broken fair weather cloud through the day on Friday. Just maybe some thickening high-level cloud, turning sunshine a bit hazier from the west, especially in Scotland later on, as this weak warm front just moves its way in. It could be enough late in the day to produce a bit of patchy drizzle around the far west coast and islands in Scotland late on Friday. Detail is tricky for the weekend, but it may just be a similar feel to where we've been through the previous days, where there's some weak fronts trying to journey their way eastwards, some variable cloud covering some of the western hills at times, and patchy light rain or drizzle just drifting eastwards locally, but typically not amounting to a great deal. It could just be once more that west and northwest Scotland see something a bit more persistent come in, especially if that frontal system over the Atlantic just encroaches towards the coast. For England and Wales, mostly light winds. Further north, the southwesterly breeze will be strongest in the far northwest Highlands. Dregs of a frontal system somewhere across central parts of Britain through into Sunday. Zones of cloud, a few spits and spots of rain, locally an odd shower. Maybe that a few places are a bit dull and murky for a time, but also some dry and bright spells will be around too, and perhaps Scotland faring better, some sunnier skies through Sunday compared to on Saturday. Mostly light winds overall then, as fairly high pressure is still extending over the country. You can keep up to date with all the very latest for your mountain area for 3 days ahead on our website. For today, that is your planning outlook. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.